Good morning. My name is Susana Bauman. I'm the founder, president, and CEO of Latinas in Business, a national nonprofit organization that advocates for the economic empowerment of Latinas and other minority women entrepreneurs. Today, I have the pleasure to introduce you to Natalie Madeira Cofield. Natalie is the assistant administrator of the Office of Women's Business Ownership at the Small Business Administration. As the senior executive, she provides oversight, management, leadership, and she champions for female entrepreneurs. So I could not think of someone more aligned with our mission than Natalie. Thank you so much, Natalie, for being here this morning with us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Sure. It was really a very good opportunity. I wanted to talk to you for a while now about your position at the SBA. And we're very, very happy to have you. Why don't you, instead of me doing a long, introduction about your background, I saw it and it's fantastic because you have been an entrepreneur yourself, right? Or you are still. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about you? What was your background before you came to this position and why are you there?
Yeah. So first off, hello to all who are watching the Latinas in Business episode today. I'm honored to be here to share more about what the Small Business Administration is doing under the highest ranking Latina in the Biden-Harris administration, which is Isabella Casillas-Guzman. So we're extremely, extremely proud of her and her leadership and her representation as a woman and a Latina in this historic presidency and in this historic administration. So my story really kind of starts with me as a young girl reading the business plans of my mother when I was 11 years old. So my mom is the first entrepreneur and entrepreneur that I was ever really exposed to. She was a senior vice president at one of the fastest growing businesses in the Rochester community, which is where I grew up as a young girl. And I realized, even though I hated reading them at the time, that I was learning so much about what business looked like, what it meant to start a business, what business planning required, what women in leadership, the challenges that we had, the experiences that she had, and watching both how people respected her and how people disrespected her as a leading woman. And when I say the disrespectful piece, I'm talking about the fact that women have oftentimes found themselves challenged in their leadership in ways that many times men are not. And whether it's intentional or unintentional, it does have an impact on women, and most certainly it's had an impact on my mom. And, I'm proud to be in a new generation of women who are leading another path that is inspired and paved by women who came before me, to really continue to break glass ceilings and to shatter the limitations that are put before us. With that being said, it's no kind of happenstance that by the time I was 26, I started my first business, and have been a serial entrepreneur ever since. And now I have the honor of being able to represent 12 million women-owned small businesses as the assistant administrator at the Small Business Administration, and really bring the experience that I had in building companies from the ground up to a multi-million-dollar business to what we do as we continue to expand our network of women business resource providers and centers across the country, to ensure that women have an equitable opportunity to have conversations like I had with my mom, which I know I was fortunate to have, with women who are able to be mentors, educators, and leaders to them in their community.
Correct. So interesting story, because a lot of small business owners, especially female small business owners, don't have a role model in their families. And for instance, me, I had my own business when I came to the United States, but I come from a family of professional people. So I had to do it all by myself, and yeah, it was very, very challenging. Natalie, as the you mentioned that you have this experience to start and grow businesses, but now as the assistant administrator, what do you see that are the challenges for women that start their own businesses or to expand them? What are the challenges that you see constantly?
Sure. I think particularly right now, I'll speak both to the pandemic that we are still recovering from, but also just in general challenges that women have. I think the challenge that many women have had during the pandemic has been how to manage the duplicity of their role, both as a mother, as a small business owner, as a caretaker, as a provider. Regardless of what their maternal status is. What we do know is that the data shows that women are primary caregivers, whether that be time, energy, and empathy, or whether it be financial caregiving to members of their extended and immediate families. And so the pandemic really put women in a position where they were challenged around managing time and managing the emotions and the health and wellness of themselves as they were giving so much to their communities. And so we saw during the pandemic also the impact that the inequity still has on women as it relates to who's the first to leave the workforce, both by required force of the small business and also by default of the many roles and hats that women wear. And so women were leaving the labor force at higher rates than at any other time since 1988 or the 1980s during the COVID-19 pandemic. And so I think, talking about physical and mental health is very important as the pandemic impacted women and their inability to stretch themselves to the brink of breakdown, which I'm sure, between the two of us and viewers that we've seen, that are watching, someone knows someone that had that experience where they just broke down in tears saying, I can't do it all, right? And then also this is on top of the other pervasive challenges that women entrepreneurs have just had, which is access to capital, access to contracts, access to educational resources, and access to networks, right? So when you layer that health and wellness component and the lack of access to markets during COVID-19 pandemic on top of the existing challenges that women entrepreneurs have had, it creates the type of moment that we're trying to address right now at the Small Business Administration, which is a moment where we're trying to ensure that women have the resources that they need to rebuild or build, to scale and to grow. And that requires that we are ensuring that we have resource centers across the country, that the distribution of disaster recovery relief is equitable as it relates to women, which I'm proud to say that this administration and administrator has done. And, that we're addressing and being honest about the challenges that women have had and doing more to support integration across all of government to champion the agenda of women as entrepreneurs and as primary caregivers in their home.
Right. Can you mention some specific programs that you have implemented either for the pandemic or in general to help? Our membership is very small businesses, usually from solopreneurs to $1 million in revenue. So they're really the startups, the 5-year-old, they're struggling ones what are the specific programs that they can take advantage of that you can think of right now, that we can help you promote?
Yeah, sure. So the first, I've continued to talk about our Women's Business Center network, right? We have 140 women's business centers across the country. You can learn about whether you have a women's business center in a neighborhood near you by going to SBA.gov and going to the resource partner section. If we don't have a women's business center, and the women's business centers are literally places where you can go for training, counseling, advisory, courses, assistance with government contract applications, and financial applications for loans and other forms of access to capital. That is your primary go-to one-stop location. If we don't have a women's business center in a community near you, then you're also able to have access to our small business development centers, where we have 900 of these centers across the country. So I just really want to ensure that folks are aware of the resource partners that we have, that you can physically walk into their establishment and get the assistance that you need. From an online perspective, we have and are proud to have the Ascent platform. This allows for women to be able to have access to training and educational resources to teach them how to scale and grow from their kitchen table. So you may not necessarily have access to go into a center, or you don't have the time to go into a center, but this allows you to be able to manage how you're going through the training of starting a business whenever and wherever you want to do that. And it's the Ascent platform. And we'll make sure to get you some information so you can share that program with your networks. And then lastly, I would say, the Small Business Administration has government contracting programs like the Women-Owned Small Business Certification Program and the 8A certification program, for which the community that we're talking to today, Latina entrepreneurs, the fastest growing entrepreneurial segment in the country, are eligible to apply for and to really compete for government contracting opportunities. And that's what we want to do. And you can find out more information about those programs, again, at SBA.gov in the government contracting section.
Right. Now, the SBA has put out a lot of programs, funding programs, especially during the pandemic, like the PPP and the EIDL. Mm-hmm. However, we found that many of our members, as I said, very small businesses, many of them solopreneurs or, 2, 3, 5 employees, had difficulties in applying to, although I thought that the application process was really fairly simple, they had problems sometimes finding the information or understanding the application process, and in some cases we had to handhold them. What is your experience into the application process of those programs, and how did you manage to help more women from that end?
Yeah, so I think a couple of things. When the Biden-Harris administration came into office, one of the big things that was done was around the way that PPP funds were distributed. And first, I'd just like to note that SBA has deployed $450 billion in resources directly to small businesses across the country. That's 450 billion with a B. So that's a lot of funding. Nearly 11 million businesses have been touched by direct capital infusion, whether it be through PPP, EIDL, shuttered venues, or restaurants from the Small Business Administration, which is incredible, which has also resulted in billions of dollars of capital being deployed to Latina businesses and to women-owned small businesses across the country. But one thing we realized when we came into office, and we had seen all the data to show us that the smallest of the small businesses had challenges getting access to PPP. And so when the Biden-Harris administration came in, we promoted and marketed the program to those businesses that were run by solopreneurs and had 20 and fewer employees. We made prioritization time periods for folks to get access to this capital through their community development financial institutions, which is different than going through the big bank that may be processing hundreds of thousands of applications at one time. We removed the requirements for student loan debt, which disproportionately affects Latinas as it relates to access to education. Many of them are taking out educational student loans, and so having that debt would then disqualify them from having access to PPP. We removed that. We also removed the requirement to have a social security number and allowed for those businesses to have tax identification numbers and promoted that, which made the community of non-citizen-based U.S. Folks that are here more eligible for access to PPP funding. And so all of those things happened during the Biden-Harris administration, first day in January. And so we saw 76% of our resources being deployed to the smallest of small businesses. Now, the challenge still stood with a few things. One, the documentation that small businesses needed to have from the beginning, right? So even though we removed some of the barriers to engagement, at the end of the day, you still needed to have your books correct. You still,
Right.
you still
Right.
needed to know what your numbers were. You still needed to be able to enter this information in and to ensure that you were eligible. So you still had to do those things. And so I think a few things were evident. One, we need to continue to do more to support the smallest of small businesses in just bookkeeping and general operational management, right? Because as the disaster hit, it was kind of like whoever was immediately ready was getting access to things immediately. There was no time to shift through paperwork and find this document. Sometimes it was like out one day and gone the next, right?
Yep. Yes. Yes.
There's,
Exactly. Exactly. And many
there's
of them have those barriers as well. They're not really all together. They don't. They are not together with their documentation. Absolutely. Yes.
And that's all the more reason why I think it's important, Susanna, for us to ensure that women are going to these women's business centers or resource providers to get their documentation in order. There's an old saying, you don't have to get ready when you stay ready, right? And so if you already have these things together, you just have them together. The other thing that we did was try to make more linguistic and reduce the language barrier, because part of this also was about making sure that the things that were coming out were in enough languages to reach all of the small business community across the country. And we also know that there were language barriers and language challenges on, whether it be the documents, whether it be how the documents and the programming was being shared and the communities that it was being shared in. And that's why the administrator was also very happy to announce the $100 million Community Navigator program, and prioritization was given to organizations that were culturally competent and engaging with a diverse array of communities and providing services in all of the languages that represent the breadth of what it means to be an American. And so we want to continue to do more in that space, and we've doubled down with providing funding to make that happen.
Right. Correct. Yes. We participated in the Community Navigator application as
Great.
well. Yes. Yes. So last question, because I know you're tied with time. Recently, last year, I think it was, your office was elevated to report directly to the office of the administrator, Guzman. What are the advantages for us? What are the advantages for us women entrepreneurs to report directly?
Yeah, so here are the advantages. When you have the ability to have a direct line of communication to the cabinet level secretary to share with her or him, right, regardless of who's in office, the pressing concerns and issues that affect women, it puts the agenda of women and women equality right at the ear of leadership, and it doesn't bury it underneath anyone else or anything else. It gives you the immediacy. And so I'm proud to have, two key leaders in our office and in our agency to aid in making this happen, which has been something that many of my predecessors, regardless again of administration, were interested in seeing happen, which was that our office would be able to report directly to the administrator. Mark Madrid, who is a huge champion and leader in the Hispanic and Latino community, and one of my former colleagues from my time and tenure in Austin, Texas, where we were both chamber colleagues at the same time, and then Administrator Guzman. And so, Suzanne, it goes without saying that this really was made possible by a collaborative of what it means to come together for all communities, men and women, Black and Latina, administration and administration, and the diversity of what representation and of what respect can look like when it comes to the conversation of equity for women entrepreneurs.
Correct. Yes, I know Mark very well. Very well. I know him, and from the time he was at the Chamber of Commerce in Texas, and so please send him my regards. I'll be happy to say hello to him. And I wanted to ask you a last question. How can Latinas in Business help you promote all these initiatives?
Yeah, I would say stay connected to us. I'm honored and happy that we're able to do this today to get the word out about what's going on at SBA. We will continue to do more to invite you all into open forum conversations that we have through our office. Join our mailing list. Sign up for opportunities to connect with our Women's Business Center network, connect with our Women's Business Center networks across the country, leverage engagement with them to expand your national footprint, right? They're looking for partners, you're looking for partners, and we just want to make sure that all of our resources are resourced and whatever that looks like. So those would be the ways that I would say, you can support continuing to share more with your community about all of the free resources that are made available by the U.S. Small Business Administration.
Okay, thank you so much, Natalie. That was fantastic. We hope that we can have you as a speaker for one of our events this year. I'll reach out to you whenever the opportunity comes up. We have a conference in June that is the Women Empowerment Entrepreneur Summit. And I'll be happy to invite you if you're interested to be one of our speakers. And again, thank you for your time and your consideration to us. And I'll see you very, very soon.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Bye.